short notice. Thank you very much, Sarah. We'll talk a bit about that later on. That's quite an important, or potentially more important bit of the infrastructure about how we share data with others, particularly small area data or small number data or low-level data. We have had a kind of oversight group for the Cald-jf-2 Guardians and the ACGs, which kind of is how this was developed. One of the things that so most requests, we try and handle them through the ACGs, and we've been working out different ways of doing that. Sometimes we have regular meetings, so where we kind of come together and discuss particular challenges or particular requests. We've also had panels, we've had about 2 or 3 of those now, where we've got really complex things, and we've had to get lots of different people in the room to try and come to some resolution about can we do X, Y, and Z. So for example, we were asked recently about an extension of the yellow card system for reporting adverse drug reactions for legal highs or illegal highs, and could we do that? So those are quite challenging. And then we have the sort of management of our daily data, and what's our role in that. So we have quite a range of functions. People familiar with, so one of the things we have, which kind of helps quite a lot, is certainly with NHS Digital, we have a memorandum of understanding, which sort of fluctuates and, and it's in constant development, but it does allow a flow of a lot of data into PHE from NHS Digital, who are a pretty core provider of a lot of things.
I just check everyone knows who NHS Digital is.
Yes.
It's the new name for the Health and Social Care Information Centre.
Yes, everybody
It's
familiar
been
with that?
extant for a year or so, but some people might not have.
So if anybody here use HARES data? Yeah, a few people. That's where it comes from. And we get it in 2 forms, get it in pseudonymised form and identifiable form, and we flow the identifiable form under regulation to various different parts of the organisation. So some people who are running surveillance functions will be linking to that. And most of our data are confidential patient data flowing under these. Some of it comes with consent, so some, like the NDTMS data, which is a drug treatment monitoring system. Most doesn't, so most of it comes under some regulation, which is SI 1438, which is the Control of Information Health. I never remember. Health Services Control of Information Regulations 2002, sometimes called Section 251, because it became that. It sits under that in the Health and Social Care Act of 2006. NANS, it's got a history. It's continued since it was first developed back in 2002. And for most people in the room, Regulation 3 is the bit under which you are processing data, which allows you to process data without consent. I'm sure you're all aware of that. And that is still extant, that is still the regulation under which we process a lot of data. We also process a lot of data under Regulation 2, which is cancer. So it permits the registration of cancer data, again without consent. And some of it we process under Regulation 5, which is probably what most people call Section 251, where you have to apply to the confidentiality advisory group and get special permission to do that. The issue for us is that of these two, Regulation 2 and Regulation 5, we have to get external kind of ratification from what's called now the Confidentiality Advisory Group, which used to be called HIAG, and something else before that I can't remember.
NIGB?
NIGB, that's the one. So you've heard these acronyms before, hopefully. And that's now part of the Health Research Authority, and they can approve research purposes and non-research purposes, but the Secretary of State has to be kind of give the final approval for non-research purposes. Anyway, so Regulation 2, Regulation 5, HRA. Regulation 3, PHE is the arbiter of processing under Regulation 3. So we make the rules. One of the things that we were hoping in the next phase is to be much more clear about that, because it's been kind of presumed. And also there are issues about whether we can have the interpretation, which I won't go into. And then there's a whole bit about anonymisation. Oh, these are the wrong slides.
Is that why they're out of order?
Yeah.
It was what I had.
I sent some the other day.
Right, let me see
Anyway,
what I had.
so it's great I've been talking to the wrong slides, but hopefully, so the other thing I want to say is that, so the Cald-jf function is not statutory, although it was originated from a health service circular back in 1997, I think it was. So the function's been going a long time. It's one of the, sustained itself over 20 years, which in the NHS is quite an impressive feat. And so our job is the organisational conscience. So the function is the determinant of whether or not we should process data under any of these regulations. And we also, we have to be mindful of the Data Protection Act and the Cald-jf principles. And people familiar with the Cald-jf principles? How many are there? Who thinks it's 6? Who thinks it's 7? It's 7. It's 7 because there was a new one that was added last year, it wasn't the year before, which is sharing, the presumption of sharing for direct care. For most intents and purposes, the principles remain the same, and I hope you all know them, but essentially our job is to only process patient confidential data to the extent to which is necessary for the purpose. So that means we really need to understand the purpose. So the Cald-jf function really is a lot about purpose. Why are we doing this? Is there a justifiable reason, and so on? And are we processing proportionate to the purpose, so not processing any more information than we need to? And increasingly, there's a lot of downward pressure on really trying to increasingly use more and more anonymised data and less patient confidential data if we can possibly help it. But both Imogen and I are facilitative. We want things to be done. We want to make best use of data. We want to do things that are properly justifiable. We want to be transparent about what we do, and we want to be able to sort of be unimpeachable if we possibly can in the way that we do things. So we want to be open, really clear. And I think the other thing is that we know that there are lots of different approaches across PHE, and somehow we need to try and share best practice. So there are people doing interesting things with anonymisation or anonymising the source or various things like that. We want to try and encourage that, a bit more collaboration, trying to get good practice and share. And it may not be feasible some of the time. Most of the time we just don't know what's going on. So we want to try and build a kind of bit more open function with the way we process data. I think I'm going to shut up there. Are there any questions? So the slides that we filmed are not the slides that I was...
My apologies, Julian, they still haven't come through, your most recent ones. I've got everybody else's.
Really?
Yeah. It's really slow because I've got stuff sending in the background. That's my fault.
Okay.
So we'll send the right version out.
Yes.
And as soon as they come through, you can have a double check to see if it's what you've got that you can.
Yeah, all right.
I'm really sorry about that.
Don't worry. Okay, any questions? Anybody worried about anything? Anybody heard anything they didn't know?
Everyone's smiling apart from Julian.
Good.
Okay.
Preaching to the converted.